Wait a minute, I hear something.
Dr. Movie! Dr. Movie! Blueberry News! Dr. Movie! Dr. Movie! Yeah!
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dr. Movie, and this is a special episode. And, one, because you saw my post recently where I kind of had a mishap with my portable microphone that I use. I keep it stored in the door panel on the driver's side of my car, and I looked down to get it to do a show, and it was gone. So throughout the rest of the week, I went back to all the places because my routine is very, very routine. And I checked all the places where I normally park, and lo and behold, a week later, I found my mic laying outside of where I stopped at a certain place and picked it up, and at least I found it, but yeah, it didn't work. So laying out in the rain and stuff is not good for microphones, just letting you know. But with that being said, I watched a movie that I instantly started trying to let people know about it. And really one of the first ones I let know was my good buddy, RJ McCready, and he's going to join me today, and let's talk about this. What's up, RJ?
It's good to be back on the show, Rick. It's always good when you and I get back together. I think the last film we talked about was Battle Beyond the Stars.
That's right.
And I never actually thought we'd be talking about a Godzilla film, and here we are. So
yeah, of course, I grew up, a 70s kid whose uncle would take him to go see all the Godzilla movies when they came out in the theater. So I just kind of grew up a fan. I kind of missed it going into the 80s and into the 90s. I never really watched any of those, and I really need to go back and watch them because I know the effects in them are pretty top notch for the time. But I checked out all the more recent ones, and I'm sure you have too. And they didn't quite live up to expectations. I don't know if it's just the fact of us getting older or, the fact of you just don't care for the people in the movies. But you know what? I never have cared for the people in these movies when I think back on it, RJ.
yeah, I do know what you mean. I first started watching Godzilla in the 90s, and some of the listeners, I know Dan Bone will be familiar with this. This is when we only had 4 channels on TV, and on channel 4 they showed a Godzilla movie on a Friday night, and it was the 60s Godzilla versus the Astro Monster.
Oh yeah. Godzilla
versus Mothra. And it was it was in the time when you had, I know you'll be familiar with this, the WWF.
Oh yeah.
Rowdy Roddy Piper versus, and that's what it felt like for a Godzilla movie. It was like, okay, so who's he going to be punching up this week? And right. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the nostalgia. And like you just said, I can't really remember a lot about the human characters in the films. Except they had like mini tanks trying to, blow up Godzilla. That's all I can remember. But
I mean, you can say, hey, I remember some of them. There were some Martians and some of them, Planet Zero and all that kind of stuff. But still, you don't really connect with any of the characters in these films. So, and yeah, you're exactly right. Because back when I was doing Rad Movie Rama, might have even been before that. I think I did it for one of the Hell Ming things, but. Yeah, the Godzilla movies are wrestling, right? And that led to the whole, Friday Night Fights thing that I was doing. Or, I think it was movie night fights back then. And yeah, I started with Godzilla versus King Kong because it's like watching a wrestling match,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so I enjoyed Godzilla. The modern day movies, I haven't enjoyed so much.
Right.
I just don't know why. I just haven't. You know me, I do enjoy films, but I just haven't really connected to them. The only one that I did really enjoy was Kong Skull Island.
Right.
That was because it had the theme, it had a Vietnam War era theme to it. And that was something I could connect with because it was like, wow, it was almost like before they did it, what would happen if Godzilla turned up in Vietnam?
Right.
That got my interest,
It's that thing too it's the familiarity too of you know, I am definitely a fan of the 70s King Kong.
Yeah.
So you're kind of having a flashback feel because of it being Vietnam of close to that time frame.
Sure.
Of movie, and I don't know if that's part of the aesthetic of it that kind of draws you to it, but I thought Skull Island worked as well. Now, what we've turned it into, I don't know. I mean, does the special effects look good with Godzilla and Kong? Sure, it looks like a Transformers movie. I mean, you know, it's that kind of action.
Yeah,
and it just seems to be missing something.
Yep.
And I don't know if you saw Shin Godzilla or not. Did you see that one?
No, I've only become familiar with Shin Godzilla after seeing Minus One.
Oh, really?
So,
I recommend it. I mean, it's a different take on the story, and it's more deeply grounded into the story of what Godzilla really is when you talk about Japan, right?
Yes.
And that's really heavy in this movie too.
Yeah.
But they really took it to another level with Shin Godzilla. So I recommend it. I thought it was good. Now, compared to this one,
mm-hmm.
and I mean, everybody that's ever seen any of my posts and stuff on Facebook already know that I think this is the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen.
Yes.
And because you can literally take Godzilla out of it and you still got a good movie. And Godzilla is more than a terrifying monster stomping on your city. It's this guy's, you know, paramount that he's dealing with as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think it's so brilliant.
What you've got here is something that's been missing in the films. I didn't really care for the films after Skull Island. I was quite disappointed that we didn't really get a follow-on in the 70s with the characters from Skull Island, because I was quite invested with James Conrad and Brie Larson's character in that, but we never really got to see that. In this film, as you just said, what you've got a really good film with a really good story about a kamikaze pilot coming back and Japan suffering. And then what you've got is Godzilla in this movie with that film. It's not like, it's not a Godzilla film looking for a story. The story's already there, and he's just turned up, and I think that's why it works. And
there's so much of, you know, again, blaming the culture of where their country was at the time and the concepts of what they were using in warfare, and it ties into all that. But then you get this incredible personal battle too that is just it's amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, folks, if you haven't seen this movie, you may want to pass on this podcast because we may end up talking about some spoilers in this, but I don't know how we can talk about it and not.
No.
So if you haven't seen it and you don't want anything spoiled, then you might want to go ahead and turn it off right now, because spoilers are coming, folks. With that being said, if all of you haven't checked out yet, the best way I can describe this movie is this is the Jaws sequel we've been waiting for. I mean, it is. I mean, it's, and when RJ and I were talking, we would just message back and forth. I said, you know, it's literally the same thing as what makes Jaws work. It's like you said, lightning in a bottle, because you take the shark out of Jaws and you still got this compelling story of these characters and the underdog, the unlikely hero. Same thing here. That's what you got. And and when I say Jaws, I mean, we can say it. This movie kind of rips off Jaws a little bit.
Yeah, it does. But I was thinking about this and I thought, I have absolutely no problem with that. And I never thought I'd say that, because, you know, you and I and a lot of our fellow podcasters, you know, including Dan Bonin on this as well, a little shout out to him. We've all said it. We've all come out and said, I would not like to see Jaws remade.
Right.
You know, this is a damn perfect film.
Right.
And then all of a sudden this turns up and boom,
yeah.
It's right in front of me. And I think this is probably the best way to do it, is to, you know, point a reference to a great movie and bring in a new, almost, you know, the character being Godzilla.
Yeah.
Stick some guys in a boat and do the same thing. And it worked. And I was absolutely fine with it as a fan. And I was really having a good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the guys on the boat. So what you got is you got a kamikaze pilot, and what's funny, because I don't know if this is going to come before this episode or after. You guys can sue me, but it made me go back and watch the original Godzilla movie from '54. And the thing about this movie is they really leaned on the original a lot. They wanted the concepts of Godzilla being what Godzilla was in the original. They wanted him to be terrifying. They wanted him to be this signification of their own wrongdoings for the country. But they make it even more personal in this movie. But then also, all the characters' names are references to people in the original movie. So that's kind of a cool thing. They kind of switched some people here and there, but the names are pretty much all the same, from my understanding of what I saw of it, because the names were being brought up, used the same way. So it really does tip the hat to the original, because again, this is Toho remaking Godzilla, and what better way than to combine all these parts from the original, and then taking from a movie that is top notch that you can't really reproduce, a la Jaws, and combining these things together with this compelling story of this guy's inner battle with himself. It's just amazing. It's amazing.
Well, you've effectively got the hero's journey, haven't you? Which is in all the great stories. Luke Skywalker went through it in Star Wars. It's something we're familiar with as the audience, and it's something that a lot of us can connect to with that character. Because when people go to cinema, you want a bit of escapism, but you also want a little bit of interconnection with your character. Think, hey,
yes,
I've been on a similar journey to that in a different fashion. And I think that's why we get behind the character. And I'll just say it, he is, when you put him on the boat, he is a Brody character.
Yes.
And then you've got the Quint, and then you've got the naval technician who's the
Hooper.
Hooper.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're seeing where it's going. I love the fact too of, so World War II kamikaze pilot, without ruining too much stuff, he survives, which a kamikaze pilot is not supposed to, and without giving too much away, which we may end up giving away anyways. But he goes back home, and home is no longer there. It's been destroyed, and he's trying to rebuild. And he deals with this inner struggle of him not following through with his order and his honor for his country. He wants to live, but that leads him down this path to where, as this story goes on, he don't want to live, So heavy contrast here with our main character. And wow, again, the fact that this is a Godzilla movie and you get that invested in the main characters it's just unheard of.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's that's what I said before. It's like you've got a good story with Godzilla in it. And before we move on, Rick, it reminded me a lot of the films that I'd seen in the 70s growing up, like the Sinbad films.
Sure.
And this film really made me think of how good those films actually are from that time, which I love, Yeah. And the fact being, I didn't really realise this until I watched this film, was they do the same thing. Say like the Golden Voyage, no, not the Golden Voyage, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger.
Yep.
It's a good film because it's got a good story.
Right.
Because our heroes go on a journey, and you follow that, and you invest with the characters. But it's a film that's got monsters in it that join that story, So it's not a film where we only talk about the saber. Of course, we talk about the saber-toothed tiger because it's. But it's not just about that. It's about everything else. So, and I think this follows on to Yamazaki, the director.
Yep.
I had a look at him on IMDb, and he's actually 60 years old.
Yeah.
And he said that some of his favourite films were these films from that time period. So that's very evident that he's,
obviously,
he's film.
Yeah, and that's again, it's being able to make something new, but making it familiar enough that you're invested in it. And I think it's a real struggle we have now, because everything is so pristine. Effects are beyond imagination to the point that we don't really celebrate the effects anymore because they just feel synthetic for some reason.
Yeah.
But when you build the story around, and then you happen to have, this, Godzilla as well, like you said, the story is built not necessarily just around a big giant lizard stomping on a city. It's intertwined into that. And I mean, it's just, I keep saying it. It's the one that we've been waiting for, right? As a fan, because I think as a kid, you don't care. You don't care about the characters. But I think the older you get and you revisit these movies, you're like, it's really hard to sit through 45 minutes of people dialogue that gets us nowhere just to see the 10 minutes of Godzilla action. And I think this one, you're invested from beginning to end because you're that taken in by the storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say the other thing, Rick, as well. And this was something because I know this is a good film because I can't stop thinking about it.
Right.
If I go shopping or I take the dog for a walk, I'm thinking about this film.
Yep.
The other thing I thought was someone has taken this film seriously. Someone's taken it
exactly.
Well, we're gonna go back to what you mentioned, the 1954 film, and it's like the director's gone, let's go back to the roots.
Right.
And that is the big issue I've got with Hollywood at the moment with films. It's what's happened to Indiana Jones, unfortunately.
Yep.
The last two films that we've had, okay, the latest one was okay, but it's like, as a fan, I'm like thinking someone needs to take this seriously, and to be serious, you might create something good.
Right. Instead of trying to shoot for it to be some kind of action blockbuster.
Yeah.
Put some meat into it, some thought behind the process. Even with the latter one, the best part of that movie is when it was young Indiana Jones fighting on the train. So when you're trying to force a story, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. When I saw Minus One, I had a feeling. Sounds a bit odd. That I haven't had since I watched like Raiders for the first time as a kid.
Right.
Where I thought, wow, I'm watching a film. This is something else. This is something different. I'm experiencing cinema history here in the making. This is a good film I haven't seen for a long time.
This is the Godzilla film that I actually told my wife we need to watch this together. So I've watched it twice now, and she's the same way. She keeps talking about the things that happen in the movie and the impact that it has, because this guy's life is a roller coaster ride of being haunted by your past, and it takes form in this giant lizard. And that's him personally. I mean, Godzilla is literally going through and destroying things because, again, it's my God, what did we do? We created our own demise. Figuratively, using Godzilla as that character. But it really focuses on what they feel is mistakes in their culture, the way that they approach things. They make a big deal about, why in the world would we go to war and put people in planes without an ejection seat? So it's all these ideas of just setting you up to die, not giving you a chance, and dying with honor, and we can say this about every country, right?
Sure. Yeah. Exactly.
Even think of, even with all the, I don't want to necessarily say terrorist groups, but all of your Arabic militant groups, that are signing up to blow themselves up, and I think hopefully as years go on, they'll say, it'd been better if we would have all stayed alive, Of
course, yeah.
So, it really hits home because we've had it in our culture.
Yeah.
You and I both, I mean, as far as where we grew up and the way things were approached. And it's wild to see it from a country that we look at. I don't know about you, but I kind of put Japan on a higher pedestal when it comes to culture and just their approach to things. I guess because I come from the CI world at work, their whole culture is based on continuous improvement, and it's just part of how they live. Whereas here we're struggling to get somebody to use it at a workplace, and they're doing it throughout their entire country, So,
Sure.
and so I mean, when I think about to see people show the downside of their country at this time and point, you're talking about right after World War II, right? And I don't know, it was a really different concept that I've really seen in anything, more or less, from Japan, but more or less even from a Godzilla movie. So, yeah.
I think what was nice about it, and it was quite refreshing today, because everything's such politically messaged in Hollywood at the moment, isn't it? And I can't stand it. I'm going to say I'm had enough of it. I just want to see a film that's just like this film, which is why this film's doing well.
Have you ever checked out the critical drinker on YouTube? Yeah. So he always says the message.
I struggle with his accent, but he's a Duncan with a cliche guy.
Exactly. I was like, man, these two need to meet.
They're great characters from Scotland. I've always got on well with the Scottish people. They've got a great sense of humour. But what I was going to say was, what I liked about this film is it is in factual fact a political message, but it's not in your face. It's just there as an undertone, and it's done very well. And there's not one point during the film where any of the Japanese people were saying, "Oh well, we hate the Americans,"
Right.
Matter
of fact, they were disappointed that they couldn't get their help, and they were on their own, and they needed to handle this on their own. And
I think what was good was in all conflicts, it's always about the government and their decisions, to go ahead. But in this film, it was showing the struggles of the people, and it's always the struggles of the people. And in this film, it is actually about the people getting together to take on Godzilla, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and then you've got like I say, the naval technicians coming together to fight, and I was right behind it.
Yeah. And how about again with the main character? You get I'm going to say a love story. But it's not a forced.
No,
it's not a forced love story. This is two people that accidentally found each other because everything's in chaos. And he ends up falling in love with this lady who has a baby, but it's not hers. The baby was handed to her while a family was dying. And she just took this baby to raise as her own. And she meets up with this guy. None of them really have a place to stay, but they end up sharing this place that I guess that maybe used to be his homestead where his parents were, but it's all been shambled. And they start rebuilding their life together. So it's almost like fate brought them together. And by the end of it, you've got a guy who was afraid to die, who's now haunted for the next, I don't know how long this time span is, for the next 10 years. Haunted by his past. It's probably not 10 years, maybe 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then he wants nothing more than to finish the job, right? So he had a chance to kill Godzilla when it was just forming, and he chickened out again. And all this haunts him through this whole movie. And it's kind of a forced haunt because he lands his plane on an island that is for repairs for kamikaze planes. And when they get there, they find out there's nothing wrong with the plane. So in other words, he chickened out and didn't want to do his mission. While he's there, baby Godzilla, if you want to call him that, hits that island, kills everybody there. But the pilot has a chance to get in his plane and shoot Godzilla in the head and possibly kill it. But he chickens out and ends up causing the death of all the engineers and mechanics on the island. Except one, and himself, which all plays into the story later.
Yeah.
But that other engineer that survived, or mechanic, gathers all the pictures of those guys that were there on that island, pictures of them and their families, getting ready to go back home because the war was ending. And here you go. Here's what you destroyed, And that lays heavy with him throughout this movie, to the point to where I had the chance to kill Godzilla before, and now this time I'm going to do everything I possibly can, including doing what should have been done a long time ago and follow through with my mission. So he has built himself up to kill himself because he's tormented and his relationship has been taken away from him as well. I won't get into all that detail unless we need to. I don't know how to approach this, RJ, and not spoil everything, right?
No, you're doing fine.
But this guy's tormented, and you are with him the whole time.
Yep.
Luckily, you have the crew, which gives it some, I don't want to say comedy, but it gives you a little bit of light in the dark tunnel, because there's some great characters in this movie.
It's exactly what Jaws does, doesn't it? When you get to the
same
boat,
thing. Yep.
You have the comedy, Hooper drives a boat, chief, and I think one of the characters, he's the naval technician, the guy with the glasses, who is Hooper. Yep. I think Hooper's cut into two characters because he's part of the other younger character.
He's the young character that doesn't know how to do everything, but he talks it. And then you got the studious, professor guy with the glasses. Yeah. I agree. It's like two versions of Hooper on the boat.
And as you said, you've already established the weight that our main character's carrying. From last scene when the T-Rex, not the T-Rex, when Godzilla turns up. Yeah. As a sort of T-Rex version.
Sure.
But what I do like, and this is kind of going on to, after Godzilla has turned up, I'm kind of going forward here, but they have like a conference of, okay, we need to put a plan together. And then all of a sudden, this naval technician is isn't he? He's got he's pointing at a blackboard and he's saying, right, this is how we're going to get rid of Godzilla. And it's funny where the captain of the crew comes out and says, I had no idea he was.
Did you know? I didn't know.
Yeah.
He was a lot more important person than they thought. So what happens is our main character is looking for work, because everything's destroyed, and he finds a job basically dragnetting the ocean to get rid of all the mines that were set out for the war. And they're supposed to pull the mines up, they raise up, and then we need somebody that can operate this machine gun to shoot the mines and blow them up and get rid of them. And even the boat thing, right? Because when he goes and sees the boat, they got these boats are going to be specially, modified to be able to handle this. And he gets to it, and it's just a wooden old ship that's all run down. But it's kind of you're going to need a bigger boat kind of moment too, So, but yeah, I mean, it's just awesome. Everything about it, and to see the regular people that used to be in the Army and the Navy and stuff pull themselves together, like you said, outside of the government leadership, and come up with a solution to this problem, and all the twists and turns that happens with that. But we can't really go without talking about Godzilla himself, because you see different phases of him. It's almost like, it's kind of like watching the first Superman movie, where you slowly see him start kind of figuring out his powers, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the same deal here, because Godzilla doesn't know what he's capable of, because he's kind of got this Hulk reflex, right? Where the madder he gets, the more powerful he gets. He hasn't really figured that out yet, but he does, and we get to see it. And that really causes the biggest destruction in the movie. Mm-hmm. And wow, when he energizes up and those spines start popping up in his back, it's freaking awesome.
Well, the other thing I was going to say was I was actually quite terrified of this Godzilla as well.
Yes.
Which is something that I haven't experienced in the other films. I thought this is quite terrifying, and it really feels like that.
Yeah, and again, that's trying to go back to the original concept of him being a unlikable, destructive creature. It's the bull in the china shop. It's the Incredible Hulk. It's uncontrollable.
Yes. Yeah.
And just the facial features and stuff. You guys have all seen the pictures of his head sticking up out of the water, and that shot is from the back of the boat looking back. Godzilla's chasing them.
Yeah.
And again, it's Jaws. I mean, that is 100% Jaws. But like you said, when you see the look on his face, it's terrifying. He's the scariest looking Godzilla. So, yeah, man. I mean, it's just an incredible film. And again, for me to recommend a Godzilla movie to my wife, that's pretty rare.
Yeah, the same, because my missus, she hasn't seen it because I did a solo trip to the cinema.
Yeah.
I pulled a Christian Slater out of True Romance, you know, watching a Japanese movie with subtitles, and it was great. Let's talk about the budget of this film as well, Rick. $15 million. I mean, what? I mean, like, how?
Yeah.
Okay.
How'd they pull this off with $15 million? And I've seen some people try to rag on the effects. I'm like, really?
No.
I've seen movies with a budget that's 15 times this look crappier than this movie. I mean, I think it looks great.
Me too. The only thing is Yamazaki, the director, he gets behind the special effects, I think, so he didn't have to employ another company in, and I think that's what cut the budget. Also, I think with the Japanese, I know how visually spectacular they can be. They've been like that for a long time. So they're very good with model making and things like that, which is something I do. And a lot of stuff I buy from Japan. So I think a lot of these ships in the film were like actual models.
Could have been.
They used to. So, I mean, especially the scene on the boat, it just looks like they're out in the sea.
Right.
You know? And it's just great.
Yeah, it's when you think about if you made this movie and again not have Godzilla in this, and you said you only spent $15 million, that would still be impressive. You know?
Yeah, because of the actual shots of the city that's been destroyed, you know, and I'm just like, wow.
How about the scene where Godzilla's walking, he's chasing the plane, right? You get, you know, the solo pilot, and he's in the plane, and he's trying to draw him out to the sea, and he just starts stomping on that house. You see the people running out of it, and the shots of that plane, and the shots down at Godzilla, and him turning and looking, so fantastic, man. It looks so great.
And I'll tell you the other thing, and I've heard you say this, Rick, as well, is there's no backstory to Godzilla. There's no monarch in this film. There's no secret agency turning up saying, "Oh, we've known about this for a long time." And I think that's what works, is because there's a massive mystery. All we know is Godzilla is just a force of nature that's turned up and wreaked havoc, and that is it. Right. And I think that's why this film works. There's just a complete mystery.
It plays into every version of who we are humanistically too, because you got people that are going to say, well, we did this to ourselves. You got some saying this is, you know, God forcing, you know, vengeance upon us. It's, you know, or it's just, you know, a phenomenon of what's going on. I mean, it can play to any variation of where you come from in life, you know, just like, you know, and I hate to get political, but, you know, if we end up getting bombed as a country, or, you know, more attack, kind of a 9/11 kind of thing, there's going to be people say, well, we had it coming, right? Because we don't mind our own business. And there's that kind of aspect of this too. You know, maybe we shouldn't have messed with technology. Maybe we shouldn't be trying to build stuff to kill other people, because this is the repercussions, right? And I think that's always been deep rooted into the original idea of Godzilla anyways.
Yes.
But it is really, really prevalent in this movie.
Yeah, Godzilla is from the 1950s. It was Waking the Sleeping Giant, wasn't it?
Right.
From America, wasn't it, with Pearl Harbor, I think.
Right.
And obviously then the atomic bomb, which is history, what happened.
Right.
Right.
This is that thing of being able. How do you cope with the real horror in life? You make up a fake one that you can digest, right?
Of course, yeah. And I think what they say in this film, they say it without saying it. You can enjoy this film. You can either take it or not. But if you know your history, you know that it was actually the two governments fighting with each other, and then the people who suffered.
Yeah,
which kind of what I get out
every
here.
time. Yeah, every time. And that's, again, you said it earlier. How does it deliver the message, but doesn't just shove it down your throat? You know,
Which is my big thing today in Hollywood. It's so shoehorned in, you know. And I hate to get political, but as a film fan, I'm just saying, just go easy with that and just give me a good film, you know, which we had in the 80s. I think everything was there.
Yeah.
But, you
didn't have to spell everything out, and we got a big problem with that now.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and I saw where somebody else was talking about the fact that this movie is about surviving. It's not preaching the message, as the critical drinker would say.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
It's about, all that stuff means nothing.
No.
When your life has been catastrophically, been destroyed and you got to rebuild, we lose focus on what's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this movie kind of brings that concept back. This is classic filmmaking.
Yeah.
But done very, very well.
And the other thing I think that's good about this film is obviously because it's from Japan, so I'm not familiar with any of the actors.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because I just loved every character in this film, and I had no connection with, they're from this film or they're from that film.
Right.
Which is a testament to them playing the characters of.
Yep. All believable. I mean, it just works. It's the Jaws concept. Everything that you say that's great about Jaws is in this movie.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it's just in a different form. So, and that's where I put it, because it's, some Godzilla fans are probably not going to like it because it's not enough action and it's too much people stuff. But Jaws is the same way. Jaws is about the people of this town and everything that happens to them and how they turn on each other, and the mayor, denying that it's an issue because it's all about making the money. And I mean, all those elements are in this, just in a different form and just done the right way. So again, it's the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen, and I've seen most of them. So
with Jaws, I think Jaws is great because every scene in Jaws is great, with all the different characters going from, the kinder kid, to even Ben Gardner and his boat, that's Ben Gardner's boat, even Sheriff Brody's wife.
Yep.
When she's on the screen, she is great because she is, the suffering wife of her husband. I think Brody suffered something when he was a police officer in New York or whatever, but we never really get into that.
Right. You don't have to. Again, that's that beauty of it.
Isn't it?
It doesn't matter to the story we're telling. All you need to know is something traumatic happened and he has a problem with it. And that's what I'm saying. That getting back to that format of not having to spell everything out, you make up your own backstory in your head of what that could be, and you leave it alone because, like you said, when you walk away from this movie, you're going to keep thinking about it because there's these things that you're wanting to kind of flesh out.
Yeah.
That makes it memorable. It makes you think about it. And this movie delivers it, man.
It's what should be left up to the audience to think, and then that's the little bit of magic that the audience can take away, and it leaves it for you and I to talk about. If you and I watched this film when we was in the car, we probably wouldn't shut up about it. Just tell you that.
Let me ask you about this. They are talking about releasing a black and white version of this. Does that do anything to you when you hear that? I mean,
I was going to get into the actual black and white. I was wondering what this would look like in black and white. I'll be fine with that, only because I was going to say the film did remind me of like The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Right.
Especially, I think I haven't seen the 54 film. I don't think I've seen it at all, to be honest with you.
I don't know that I've ever seen a film that I saw in color first, and then I go watch in black and white later and go, I like the black and white version better. I'm anxious to see this, but I'm not. I don't know that it's going to make me go, I like the black and white version better, because I don't know. Maybe if it was the other way around. I wouldn't want to see Ted Turner get his hands on the original Godzilla movie and colorize it which I think they probably did. I don't know, but
No, I'd be all right for a black and white version, but it'd just be a bonus on
sure.
like a
That's kind
Blu-ray.
of where I am too. It's not going to make me go, oh, this is going to make it a better film. I don't. Maybe it's just where I'm lacking with my, movie love. I don't know, but I don't know. I think the coloring in this works because it is not vibrant. It's dark. It's, all your shades are dark. It's almost kind of Lord of the Rings gloom and doom kind of look about it.
Yeah. It's got like what I call like an autumn look to it.
Right. It's already, it's not like it's super bright and sunny. I mean, when the scene when Godzilla does the atomic breath the first time and the ash is falling from the sky, it's raining ash and our hero is looking up at Godzilla and just starts screaming. Man, it's just amazing, man. And I just don't see where making that black and white anymore is going to make it any more effective because it was already so dark,
I think that's just a personal preference
Could be, yeah.
how visual you are wanting to look at something. I mean, funny enough, I watched in the 90s, me and my mate, we turned the TV to black and white because you could just press a button.
Right.
And we watched we watched Aliens in black and white. And that was pretty cool, just seeing it from a different perspective. So, yeah, I guess it's a personal preference on how visual you want to look at something, I guess.
Of course, I grew up where, a lot of people still didn't have color TV when I was a kid. So I watched a lot of stuff in black and white.
So did I. Yeah.
TV, I was about to say, we're right there. You're probably right on the cusp of it, right? But, I mean, it was still pretty standard. My wife said the other day, I mean, she was talking about they didn't have a color TV until it was way into the 80s. They had a black and white TV all through her childhood, So, I guess that's why black and white doesn't seem like that big of a deal because it was kind of a commonplace before,
Yeah.
So.
But, I was thinking about this as well when when you invited me onto the show, and I knew you was going to say to me like a question of, what do you like about this film? A lot. It's like I was thinking, well, where do I start?
Right.
Because it's about 10 things which are great, Yeah.
I can't think of a weak scene in this movie.
No. And it's obviously gaining some traction as well, critically and amongst the fans, because a lot of people were talking about this film.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I knew a film like this would turn up eventually.
Yeah.
It's we've got quite a lull especially in 2023. Because I'd said to you, didn't I? I sent you a video.
Yeah.
The comparison to 1983 of films,
Every movie on the list was a classic. I mean, a bona fide classic.
and that was just a couple of them.
Yeah. And here, I mean, we're struggling to have just a decent movie of the year. I mean, so I'm this might have came out at that perfect time to where it really showed you what we're lacking because you could even compare it to other movies coming out at the same time.
But I know it's a bit. It does make me think what's Hollywood doing with all the money at the moment, because they're making films for like $350 million, and
right.
You compare it to this film, and someone in the studio's got to say, "Hang on a second,"
right?
Because $1 million is still a lot of money today,
Right.
And I know a lot of independent filmmakers that would probably do quite a bit with that, and
right. It's again, just it's mind boggling that they did what they did for the amount of money they had. And the people that have seen it, everybody that I know that has seen this, they're still talking about it just like we are.
Yeah.
It's made that kind of impact. So, I mean, there's even talk of it maybe even getting nominated for an Academy Award, which is crazy when you think about it. Yeah,
it should.
International film winner of the Academy Award is Godzilla Minus One. Who would think Godzilla would ever win any kind of Academy Award, right?
Well, I have to say that they're knocking it out of the park. Southeast Asia cinema. You know, you look at South Korea. They brought out Train to Busan.
Yeah.
We had, whether you like it or not, Squid Game. That was pretty good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
You had the TV show. One that surprised me, I don't know if it was of any interest to you, to Rick, was actually One Piece.
I haven't seen it.
It was it was like an old pirate manga story.
Cool.
And I really enjoyed it. It took me by surprise. So Southeast Asia's knocking out of the park. You know.
Cool. Well, you know, normally on the show I try to give a movie a rating. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what we're going to say, but it's a 1 out of 5 rating, 1 to 5 kind of rating. And obviously this is a 5 all day long, possibly a 6, but what do you think? Are you thinking the same?
Oh, I'll give it 11. 11 naval, geeky naval techniques.
This one goes to 11.
Was you putting off a British accent there, Rick?
Well, it's Spinal Tap, you know. This one goes to 11. Yeah. Still got the old tagger on it. Oh man! I don't know what to tell people. I mean, you need to go see this. And now there's gonna be people, because I talked to a guy at work and he's like, "Oh, is it subtitled?" I'm like, "Really? That's going to be what keeps you from watching an incredible movie? Is you got to read."
Sorry, I read.
I mean, come on. So, but yeah, you're going to have subtitles. I want to go see. I know they got it in IMAX. I'd love to go see it in IMAX.
Yeah.
But I can't recommend this movie enough. I think this is a bona fide classic, and I'm interested to see how they follow this up. So
yeah, I don't know. I thought about that. I don't know. I don't know how they could do. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, sure enough. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. Always a pleasure, man. Now, if you don't know, RJ and I used to do Dude Looks Like the 80s. We kind of got that going, and I kind of wigged out on him, but he kept that running, and then he did a solo show, Bite Size Cinema, for quite a while. Yeah. I know that you and Dan have got, is it 1 show or 2 shows?
We've got 1 show, Blame It on the Aliens.
Blame It on the Aliens. I thought maybe there was something else. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, we're just on a little bit of a hiatus at the moment because it's just difficult to try and get recording, but you know. Yeah,
I'm trying to get him and Gav both to come on here and cover the Cannonball Run movies, but I know they're busy guys too, and it's kind of hard to get it all together. So, but we will. We will get,
Dan and I will get together soon.
Cool.
So yeah, listen out for that.
Well, brother, it's always great to have you on the show, and I'm sure we'll do some more stuff. I'm sure.
yeah, absolutely, Rick. And like I say, I'm a big fan of your show. Just keep doing what you're doing as well. You know, there's a lot of films that you bring to the table. I'm like, I have not heard of that film, and maybe I should.
Well, there's quite a few of them that I've never seen before that I'm bringing to the table too. So,
like, was it Tubi's a wonderful thing for you?
Well, it can be. It can also make you go, all right, what am I doing with my life? The bad shark movies almost got me.
Oh God, no.
Man. And I still got there's still 40 left in my list to watch, and I just can't bring myself to get back into them. Maybe next summer I'll revisit the bad shark movies and do another run of them. That's hard to do.
Oh, dude.
Well, man, again, appreciate you being on. Always a blast.
Anytime, Rick. Anytime, man. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Folks, that's going to be it, and we will check you later.